Silence no more. Silence no more.
Well, hello, I'm Janet Morana, the Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to Just Ask Janet. Well, as you know, every day, thousands and thousands of babies die from an abortion here in our country. And of course, with every death of every child, there's a mom affected, a dad's affected. And at that moment, sometimes the woman might say, well, I think my problem was solved. But they realize it led to so many other problems. And you probably might know someone who's had an abortion and maybe they haven't found healing yet. So on the program today, we're going to give you a very unique opportunity. We're going to talk to a very good friend of mine. This is a person who had an abortion herself. She sadly went down that road. But then after that despair, she climbed up into healing and she established a beautiful healing program. And we're going to learn about that today. So joining me right now is my very, very dear friend and sister in the Lord, Sheila Harper. Sheila, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. I am so honored to get to talk to you, Janet. Thank you.
Well, I am too. And I know you don't mind doing this. And that's what I always like to tell the audience, that they'll ask me sometimes, well, why are you asking them about their story? Are you sure they want to share? Sheila will openly share her story because it will tell you about the damage, but then she'll also tell you a story of redemption and healing. So Sheila, tell us, what were the circumstances that brought about you to go down that road to abortion?
Well, talking about the circumstances, first of all, no little girl ever dreams of one day growing up and having an abortion. It's not like something that we ever write about in our diary or anything like that. But there I was at 19. I was in college. I was dating a guy that I shouldn't have been dating, very bad influence on me. But he was the one who spoke truth to me. He wanted to get married once we found out I was pregnant. And I didn't give him a choice. Men are so unfairly stereotyped sometimes, but he responded in a way that I had no idea. So here I was at 19. He was wanting to get married. I didn't want to get married and have a child. And so I went to my best friend and I said, I told her that I was pregnant and I was devastated. And she said, oh, just have an abortion. It's no big deal. I had one when I was 15. And when she said it's no big deal, I thought, oh, it's no big deal. It was like those words just hung in my mind. And every time I felt yucky about this decision, I went back to what she said. Well, it's no big deal. And then as I got closer to the day, because she and I made the appointment together at the local abortion clinic in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And when I knew that March 29th, the day of the abortion, was coming closer, I kept feeling worse and worse about it. Like I knew something didn't feel right about what I was doing, but I kept going forward because she said it's no big deal. And then I started thinking about the Supreme Court, and I thought, well, if the Supreme Court made it legal, then it must be okay. There must be more to the story than what I'm realizing, or they wouldn't have made it legal. So it's probably not as bad as what I'm thinking. And so I just marched forward thinking this is going to be an end to this problem. It's just going to be a little speed bump in the road. That's the way I looked at it. Like, okay, it's just going to be a moment. I'm going to get this all taken care of. And then me and my boyfriend can go back to living life the way that we were. And so if I could describe in detail, if I had words to describe how horrific that day was, how horrible that clinic was, the smell, the people, just on and on. I knew once I got there that it was horrible. And when I left there, I had no idea what I had just done. One of the main things. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, well, Sheila, I just want to focus just for a minute on that day at the clinic, because people still don't realize this, that when you show up for an abortion, it's not like any other medical procedure. Let's face it. If I go to a doctor and he says, Janet, let's say, you need some sort of medical procedure, it's in and out surgery, same day, well, certainly you've met the doctor ahead of time. You go to a hospital for what they call pre-admission testing. They've already had a complete medical history from you, right?
That's
They
right.
took blood, urine, chest x-ray. You meet with an anesthesiologist who tells you what the thing is. And then the day of the surgery, you see the doctor. He talks to you before the surgery again. He talks to you after the surgery. And you usually leave with a follow-up appointment, pain meds, and an antibiotic. Now, could you just tell our people, because I want them to understand, because as you know, they make abortion right now like no big deal, like you said. Oh, safe, simple, have abortion today, go back to school, work tomorrow. It's all about women's health. And what I always say, Sheila, is there's nothing good about an abortion for women's health. So do you mind just telling them, did any of that stuff happen the day of your abortion? Like, when did you meet the doctor for the first time?
When I met the doctor the first time, he came into the room where we were sitting, and he sat in a chair and just kind of, I don't even remember anything that he said. But let me tell you about this room. When I got into this room, I was sitting there with another girl. And by the time they started calling our number, and that's the only way they referred to us was by a number, I was number 2. And by the time they started calling numbers, that room was filled to beyond capacity. There were girls sitting in every seat, on every chair, but on every arm of every chair and couch. There were girls lined around the walls, and there were girls sitting on the floor in hospital gowns. I mean, this is not like any kind of doctor's office I have ever been in. And if you ever go into a doctor's office like that, I would suggest that you run in the opposite direction. Especially, I signed in with a fake name. I didn't have to show any kind of proof of identification or anything. I did a fake name because I was so afraid somebody was going to know me. And so then they gave me the card with the number 2, and that was how I was referred to the entire time I was there, was number 2. And so, yeah, it's not anything. I've had other surgeries, and I have felt completely safe and secure in these doctors' hands. This place was not that. It was a horrible, horrible place.
And so immediately following the abortion, first of all, a couple things. Number one, how did the relationship go with your boyfriend now that you had that abortion? And how did you feel then in those following months after that abortion?
Well, I knew right after the abortion something was horribly wrong, because they took me into a recovery room that was nothing but a room filled with beanbag chairs. And I remember seeing those girls coming into this room, those same girls that I saw flipping through magazines and talking. Everybody was coming into this room completely different. That we were crying. I was crying. Nobody was looking at each other in the eye. All I wanted to do was get out of there. And so as soon as I could get out of there, I did. And I went home. My boyfriend stuck around for a couple of weeks, and then he broke up with me. And I really don't blame him. I deserved far worse. That was just as much his child as it was mine. And he couldn't stand the sight of me. And so what I thought I was saving completely vanished, because he was over. And I felt this rejection that was absolutely horrible. And it was at that moment I took that secret and I buried it as deeply as I possibly could, so nobody would find out what I had done, because I knew at that point this was a big deal. It wasn't what my best friend had made it out to be, that it was no big deal. It was a really big deal.
Did you ever have a conversation with her again about it? Or when stuffing it, you never even spoke to her? Because I'd be curious to say, like, did you say, you told me this was no big deal and I am devastated? Or did you just stuff it so far down that you just kind of tried to push on with life?
Well, it was one night in a bar, because right after the abortion and the rejection of my boyfriend, I started hitting the bars like crazy. I didn't drink a lot before, but then I just started. And me and her, we would go to the bars every night, just started hitting the bars so hard. And it was one night, it just in this both of us were drunk, and I told her, this really bothered me, this abortion. I don't know how you did it, and it was no big deal. And she confessed to me that even though she had an abortion at 15, she tried to take her own life at 16. And she never did tell me that part. And it was at that point our relationship ended, because I knew she had lied to me. And I don't really know why. I never had closure over that relationship. I never knew why she lied to me and told me that it was no big deal. But I knew at that point I did not want her in my life anymore, because this was a devastating moment for me.
And then how long did it take you? Like how many years, or what was the timeline till you finally said, I need help, I need healing? And how long did that take?
Well, my life just kind of went off the rails after that. Within the year, I was completely reliant upon drugs and alcohol just to get through the day. In the middle of all of this, I met a man who was wonderful, and I cleaned myself up enough to get married. And I say he was wonderful. He was actually an alcoholic, and we met in a bar, and we were both drunk. But that was just my life. I just lived in this numb state. And we got married and had a child right away. And he would talk openly about how much he hated abortion and how abortion was so horrible. And it wasn't until a year and a half into our marriage, I finally confessed to him that I had had an abortion, thinking he was going to leave me and, just walk out and take our kids and all of that. But he didn't. He loved me. And he started thinking, okay, well, we need to get some help for you. And so we did the only thing we knew to do. We found, and this was back in 1992, we found a secular psychologist in the Yellow Pages, okay? So that was the only thing we knew to do. And I'm not against counseling, but if you're going to get counseling, it should be biblical counseling, because we went to this secular psychologist thinking, okay, I'm going to get some counseling and she's going to help me. But she made me feel worse than I already had. She confirmed that I really was crazy, because she was pro-abortion. And it was like, why are you feeling badly about this? And it was not a good experience. And it just kind of confirmed to me, I really am crazy. I really am losing my mind, because what society was telling me was that I had made a good choice and this was my right, but that was not what was computing on the inside.
So how did you get back to the Lord and establish, which we're going to talk about now, is one of the best healing programs out there? But how did you get to there?
Well,
how did you say, I know I'm not crazy?
I know, it's hard to believe, but I was simply driving down the road one day, and a commercial came on the radio, and it said, if you're suffering after an abortion, we have a class for you. And I remember just like looking at the radio, turning up the knob, like, did I just hear what I think I heard? Because I had so isolated myself. I thought, there's not anybody out there that is really suffering after an abortion. It's just me. I'm just the only crazy one. And to hear that somebody had formed a class, that like there's enough of us that we could form a class. And so after 3 or 4 attempts, I finally showed up one night to take this class, and it absolutely changed my life. And it was literally just God's word applied to that wound that abortion had left me with. And so I went through this class. I did my homework. I knew from the very first night it was going to be different, because when I showed up terrified to tell anybody my story, everybody else in that room was telling my story. And it so validated the 7-year period of all of the drug and alcohol abuse, the suicide attempt 3 years into it, just the the roller coaster of emotions that I had been on, it validated that whole 7 years because they were telling my story. And I knew right then that I wasn't alone. And it was absolutely incredible. I immediately started volunteering at the pregnancy center who offered this study. And before I knew it, I was teaching their abortion recovery classes. And it was absolutely wonderful. I was hooked at that point.
Yeah. And you know, Sheila, I mean, that really is how the abortion industry has, what you just say, succeeded in deceiving women, is because they want you to be isolated. They want you to think that you're the only crazy person because they're selling it like no big deal. And so I think that's what's so great about the healing programs. And also, as you know, the Silent No More Awareness campaign that I co-founded with Georgette Forney is those who have been healed and feel God's calling them to share testimony is so powerful because they know that they're not alone and they can reach out for help. So now you went from teaching their Bible study program, their program, but how did you get? I'm going to hold up your book. I'm going to go with the first one, your very first one here. That's how long shows how long I've known Sheila.
That's
it's a
right.
guide to emotional healing after abortion. And in fact, Sheila, you actually autographed it. It says to Janet, "Thanks so much for all you do. May God abundantly bless you, Sheila Harper." See, I save
That's
everything.
awesome.
So tell everybody, how did you come to develop now your own healing program?
Well, as I was teaching this class, we moved from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Nashville, which is where we live now. And we got involved in a big church up here, and I asked if I could teach this class. It was another Bible study, and it was the only thing I knew. And when I went and taught this class at this huge church, the very first night, I had 10 women show up, which is, if you've been in abortion recovery, that's a really big class. And so these 10 women, on the very first night, I heard one say, "If I could just save one unborn baby, I would be willing to tell my story." And when she said that, it was like I knew all of those classes that I had taught in the other city. I knew that I had heard somebody say that exact phrase. But on this night, it was like all the bells and whistles went off, and I knew, like, God wants me to do something about this. If I could just save one unborn baby, I would be willing to tell my story. And so I started praying, and it was like God just started downloading to me how powerful these men's and women's stories are to get out the truth. How, like, hearing those other stories validated me. And I knew, like, okay, I'm not alone. To hear these stories are so incredibly powerful. And so I just started praying, and I would go back and tell these 10 women, like, this is what I feel like God is showing me. And he first took me to Proverbs 18:21 that says the power of life and death are in our tongue. And then he took me over to Revelation 12:11 that says we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so he started showing me how powerful what we speak is, how powerful to overcome any deception that the abortion industry can throw at us, because it's right out of the devil's playbook. So I just started putting the pieces together. We applied for our nonprofit status in 1999. He started giving me books to write in the early 2000s, and I wrote that first book that you're holding up there, and I would have never dreamed in a million years that now it's been translated in over 20 languages and is being used in 27 countries around the world. It's been amazing.
That's incredible. Of course, here's the name of it, SaveOne, and your website is SaveOne.org.
Yes.
Where people can find out all your materials. And also, I know, Sheila, you've also now raised up what you call chapters, right, all over the United States and internationally too. So tell us a little bit about that. What can a chapter do if someone connects with a chapter?
Well, we've done all the homework for you because we just want people to offer abortion recovery. And so we travel all the time, and that's our main goal, is to start chapters in churches and pregnancy centers or standalone ministries around the world. And to be an officially recognized chapter of SaveOne, you have to be in one of those three, just so you have that spiritual covering and accountability. But when you start a chapter, it is literally just offering our studies to the public. It's like at your church, just starting it as one of the small groups, or at your pregnancy center, start advertising that you have abortion recovery, and it becomes this incredible outreach for your community, because the numbers are staggering. How many people go by your center or your church or your parish or whatever every single day who need this type of help? And so it becomes an incredible outreach. But to be a chapter, we don't charge for that. There are no dues you have to pay. The only cost is the training, which is like $65 if you get the videos online, or we'll come in person and do a training. And we only charge travel expenses for that. But to do a training, we get you trained, and then the cost of the books. And then what most of our chapters do, we'll turn around and charge each participant the cost of the book. And so it's virtually, it really doesn't cost you anything at all, because you make that money back, because the people are so thankful that you offered them help, and they stay attached to your organization. So it's just a beautiful process, how God has set up the whole thing. But we have over 300 chapters in 27 countries around the world now. And it's not even scratching the surface yet. We need so many more.
Oh, I know we do. People always ask me that. They say, well, what are you going to do if Roe v. Wade is overturned and we end abortion? I said, if abortion ended tomorrow, legalized abortion, our work would still go on, because there's so many people out there that are still hurt, that think, that no one understands their pain. It's an unforgivable sin. And so we're just going to keep out there until we've healed everybody. So I want to show everyone, this is the newer version. I told up before the original. This is the SaveOne study. And then, of course, Sheila, I have to tout the other things you've written here. Survivor, a journey through abortion and back. That's your story, right?
Yes, it is my story, my whole testimony of what happened to me after the abortion.
Yeah, because just now, she just gave you a quick glance at it, but this book really goes into the whole depth of it. And then, of course, your newest book is SaveOne, the Ripple Effect. And that's kind of what I wrote about, and someone more talks about it, is the shock waves that at the death of every baby, it has this ripple effect, or this shock wave that reverberates out. It affects the dad, the grandparents, future siblings. I mean, it goes on. And that's the part that people aren't even realizing, right, Sheila, of this ripple effect of abortion, right?
That's right. There are so many people out there. We've had people come through the SaveOne class who drove someone to an abortion clinic. It may have been 20 or 30 years ago, and they're still suffering because they see what happened to the person and they feel like they were a part of that. So it is a huge ripple effect. And just so I could say, Janet, your book was amazing. The book Shockwaves, I read that as well. It's really, really good.
Oh, thank you, Sheila. Well, we all have to keep writing and getting the word out, because when you listen to the secular world out there in the media, they are still promoting abortion like no big deal. Have it today,
That's right.
Go back to work and school tomorrow. But we deal with the fallout. We see the damage. We see the people who are suffering. And we also see the joy of the Lord in them when they are brought to healing, right? I mean, it is just, I find it so incredible because, I've also done a lot of the Rachel's Vision retreats. I've been on team. And you must see this even with the Bible study. You get that woman on that first entry point, whether it's a retreat or a Bible study, and you can see they're all nervous. A lot of them, they're afraid to make eye contact. But then as they get into the program, right, Sheila? And then as they get to the end, I think we should take a before and after picture, It's kind of like what they want to do when you get your hair done, a before and after picture. I think there should be before and after pictures, because if the person could see their face, really look at your face before you started your healing, there's just a certain way their face is. And then when they've finished that healing, that program, it's like they've been uplifted. You can actually see it, right, Sheila? It's visible in their faces, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I tell people in our trainings that your seat as the leader is addictive, because you get to be you get to watch firsthand God's miracles take place. And it's exactly like what you were saying. You see them come in so broken. Sometimes they can't even say the word abortion. And then after 3 and 4 weeks, they're starting to talk to other people. And then after 6 or 7 weeks, they're starting to be completely transformed right before your eyes. And it's absolutely beautiful. Can I just tell a quick story real quick
Sure.
about that same thing? Well, when I offer this class, it's always very confidential, like we make sure. And my husband and I used to pastor a church. And so I would hold the class, and people would always, want to make sure you're not telling your husband, the lead pastor, who's in this class. And I always had to go overboard, letting them know, no, he doesn't even ask. He knows this is confidential. We do not tell who's in this class. I don't have to turn in a roll or anything. This is our secret. It's confidential. I would go on and on. So I was holding this class one time, and everybody knew there were 4 women in this class. We didn't have any men or anybody in there this time, but there were 4 women in this class. And on the very last night, my husband had to drop me off. We have what is called a night of honor, and it was the night of honor on the very last night. And we had that at one of the participants' houses. And so my husband had to drop me off because we had to go to the airport or somewhere after that. And so he dropped me off really early, and then he left. And then when he came back, he texted. And so I said, okay, guys, I'm going to go out to the car and leave, and then just watch. And when I'm gone, then you can go to your cars, just to keep that confidentiality. Well, it was at the end of the class. Well, one of the girls sat up and she said, I'm going to go tell Pastor Jack hi. And it was like, all of a sudden, she didn't care that he knew that she was in the class. And so when she said that, one by one, each one of them said, well, I'm going too then. If you're going, I'm going. It was like just this courage rose up in them. And all of a sudden, they didn't care who knew that they were in that class. And it was because they were healed, and they were ready to tell people their story and what was going on. And so the one by one, they went by our car and said, hi, Pastor Jack. Hi, Pastor Jack. Just kept on and on. And by the end, he was crying because he knew what a big deal that was, that they weren't keeping confidentiality anymore and they didn't care. So it's moments like that that are so incredible.
Well, and it's because the shame has been removed. Well,
That's
Sheila,
right.
thank you so much. I want to remind everyone that same shame can also be removed from someone you know. So please go to Sheila's website, SaveOne.org. All the information you need is up there for how you can find the healing, how you can start a chapter. Do it today, because like Sheila and I are telling you, we see the joy when that shame is removed, and their life has been transformed. So please help us spread the word about Sheila Harper's SaveOne abortion recovery program. Well, Sheila, thank you for joining me. It was a great pleasure to have you today.
I absolutely loved being here. It was good to see you. Thank you for this honor.
Okay. Well, brothers and sisters, thank you too for joining us on Just Ask Janet. And remember, there are some abortions only you can stop, some lives only you can save, and also some people only you can bring to healing. Join us again next time on Just Ask Janet. God bless.